Good morning, everyone. Persons online, persons at the Norman Manley Law School. Today is Tuesday, March the 6th, 2024. My name is Dion Cruikshank, attorney at law, tutor at the Norman Manley Law School Legal Aid Clinic. And on behalf of the Norman Manley Law School Legal Aid Clinic, we'd like to welcome you to the second day of our Legal Aid Fair. The buyer must be aware. This morning, we will have with us facilitators who will educate and inform us as consumers of things we need to know and to look out for when purchasing various items. Our first person this morning, our first guest speaker, will be Mr. Lenworth Clark, representative from the Bureau of Standards, National Compliance and Regulatory Authority. And to welcome him this morning is Miss Janine Williams, a student of the Norman Manley Law School Legal Aid Clinic. I turn over to you now, Miss Williams.
Mr. Clark has worked as a regulator for over 18 years. His work is centered around inspecting, monitoring, sampling of commodities, and conducting enforcement actions against non-conforming commodities at ports of entry, manufacturing establishments, warehouses, and retail outlets in Jamaica. His duties aid in the prevention of harmful substances or unsafe commodities from entering the Jamaica's domestic market. Mr. Clark also assesses product labels to verify that the information provided is adequate to the requisite legislation. He provides technical guidance on the appropriate legislation to be used by clients of the NCRA and other stakeholders. Mr. Clark currently sits as a member of several technical committees hosted by the Bureau of Standards, Jamaica. Mr. Clark currently holds a Master of Science in Government, Public Sector Management from the University of the West Indies, Mona. He is also a proud past student at the College of Agriculture, Science, and Education, CASE, where he spent 5 glorious years. At CASE, he did a Bachelor of Technology in Agricultural Production and Food Systems Management and an Associate of Science degree in General Agriculture. Lastly, Mr. Clark enjoys spending time with his family and friends, being around well-behaved children, socializing, watching, and playing football. Mr. Clark, turn over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Williams. And now we welcome Mr. Clark with his presentation this morning.
All right, morning again, everyone. Let me take this opportunity to thank you for having me here at the Norman Manley Law School Legal Clinic Fair. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here to, speak about what happens in a practical sense from the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority. Maybe it's the first time you're hearing this name, but I will definitely tell you who we are and what we are all about. Okay, so the objective of this presentation is to just tell you about the NCRA in essence and to answer the question that was posed: the standards for goods for imports, what are the rules, do they apply to online purchases, and we will speak about some enforcement actions throughout this presentation. So there's a change. A lot of persons will know about the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. You said the Bureau of Standards, a lot of persons will know about us. But there was a decision by the cabinet in 2015 to remove the regulatory division of the Bureau of Standards and turn it into a new entity called the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority. So the Bureau of Standards is still there. As a matter of fact, this change is part of the Government of Jamaica public sector transformation program. We are actually component 5, where remove the regulatory arm from the Bureau, rebrand the Bureau, and that regulatory division is now a new entity. So it's a World Bank project that went on from there. So now you still have the Bureau, and as you can see, there's the old logo and there's a new logo. The Bureau of Standards now is, as they are the standards body, and they're also the testing agency. Why did all of this went about? Reason is just simple. You can't have the regulator and the persons who are making the regulations in the same entity. There's some amount of conflict of interest there. Hence, one of the fundamental reasons for the change. As you hear in the introduction, we're still a transitioning entity. Even though you do now have the NCRA Act that was passed by both houses of parliament and ascended by the Governor General, we're still in a transitioning mode. So if you come to the Bureau of Standards and you're talking about regulations and all, we still use their corporate entity, corporate parts like their HR, we still use their finance, we still use most their IT, everything we use. However, we are actually transitioning. When the full transition will take place, I can't give you that answer. It is within the wisdom, if I may say, of the minister. How did the change came about? It was through an instrument of authority. And as legal minds, I think this part is good for you. Oh, sorry. It's an instrument of authority that the transition took place. And as I said, it started back in December of 2015. That's when it started. Possibility exists that when I'm doing another presentation, this may not be there because, as I've said earlier, there is the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority Act that was passed and went through all the legal things that it should happen. So again, the NCRA, we are a statutory body. Same as the Bureau is a statutory body. Lots of persons think we're an executive agency. No, we are not. We do not have executive power. So we can't be an executive agency. So we are a statutory body, and we do fall under the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. And our slogan, if I may, is health, safety, and fairness in trade. That's what we are all about. So our primary legislation, again, it's the NCRA Act of 2023. Currently, there are no regulations under that act as yet. Although we still, in that act, you have consequential amendment that sees where the name Bureau of Standards under the standards that the Processed Food Act and Weights and Measures Act was changed over in some instance to the NCRA. So we still have powers under the Standards Act, the Processed Food Act, and the Weights and Measures Act, and their attendant regulations or trade orders, depending on the circumstances. So these are our primary legislation that we use to carry out our functions on a day-to-day basis. We also use other legislation. So the trade prohibition of importation of used tires. So there's a ban on used tires. So unless you're doing it for retreading purposes, there's a ban on used tire. We also take samples of petroleum products. So probably when you're sleeping at night, or inspectors are done by Petrojam collecting samples in order for the Bureau of Standards to do the test. And then we get the result and we send it to the Ministry of Technology, where they do their analysis and make the determination on what should happen to that product. Most persons might ask about bad gas. That's one of the fundamental reasons what happened, the change where we now take the samples, have the Bureau test the product, send it to the Ministry of Technology. You also have the public health tobacco control. So the labeling of tobacco is within our remit. And also you have the customs prohibition of importation of goods. So we had to fall in this, so just in case there's anything that is imported and it's within our remit, we now have the power to take any legislative action. So this one, primary legislation, and the other legislations that we use are where our names fall under. At the NCRA, and I don't know the meat of the matter, I'm just telling you about the NCRA. We have 3 inspectorates. You have the Food Safety Inspectorate, you have the Legal Metrology and Petroleum Inspectorate, and we have our Import and Domestic Commodities Inspectorate. As it said, food safety. So they mainly deal with food. Food, like we go to manufacturers of food right across Jamaica, and they have to be registered with us. So we conduct inspection and monitoring of those products, take samples. The legal metrology, what they will do, anything that weighing and measuring devices that are used in trade. So when you go to your gas stations and you see the stickers on the gas pumps are close to the nozzle, we are the ones who go verify that the amount of petrol that you're getting. For example, if you want 40 liters, it's actually 40 liters that you're getting. Not necessarily the cost for it, but we deal with the volume. Or sometimes when you go to your supermarkets, you will see stickers on the scales at the exit. We want you to know that if you are saying that you're buying 2 kgs of flour, it's actually 2 kg of flour that you are getting. And you have the department that I now have oversight of, which is the Import and Domestic Commodities Inspectorate, where we do inspection right across Jamaica at retail outlets, and we are also at the import, the port of entry, I should say, whether it be down by the wharf, as we call it, or at the airport, or any one of the ports that products come into Jamaica. We are actually there. We have persons who are stationed now at berth 11. Once persons are importing, we are there to inspect the containers. But the other ports, we are on call. Airport, the ports in Montego Bay, even if you have your private port, we are on call to do inspections. So if you're taking in steels, if you're taking in cement, if you're taking basically any product, we are there to conduct inspections. So again, this is important to you because you need to know an interpretation. Generally, most of the acts have the interpretation in section 2, correct? Yeah, so interpretation. So a commodity, you will hear me speak about commodities. That's the terminology that we use because that's a terminology that is in our law, commodity. And it means any article, product, or thing which is subject, what's supposed to be, to trade or commerce. So anything that you're about to offer for sale is actually a commodity. But you probably see under standard specification, they maybe speak about good. But a good, and as you have asked me the question about goods, is a product bought for consumption or for sale. And they also now have a clear definition for a domestic market, and it's where supply and demand of goods and service within Jamaica. And I ensure that I took this one out because we have jurisdiction of products that are in Jamaica, not the ones that are outside of Jamaica. So it's just within our domestic market. And you also have what we use. You may use the terminology regulations, but we use compulsory standard specification. And if I may pause here to say, we are phasing out compulsory standard specification too. So in our transition, we're also phasing out compulsory standard specification because according to the WTO, you're not supposed to be using standard that are mandatory. You're supposed to be using regulations. So we are moving from compulsory standard specification into what they consider as technical regulations. But we still now have to use the compulsory standard because that is what is at our disposal. And those compulsory standard specifications are standard specification which has been declared by order by the minister. So you do have products that have a standard specification, but it's not a compulsory standard specification. So currently, when I look at the last list, we have about 300 plus standard specification. But out of that 300 plus, there are about 135 compulsory standard specification. So only when the minister, by order, dictates that the standard specification can become a compulsory standard specification, we can do so. So again, even though I've said it over and over, the roles, we conduct inspections at our ports of entry and within our domestic market. We also take samples of product and we examine those products. We take product labels for analysis. When we send the products to the lab to be tested, when we get back the results, we have to analyze it because we now have to match it to a legislation to ensure that persons are compliant. And these are mainly when we are unable to see what is in the product. So if I may pause and say, whenever we go to conduct an inspection at a food manufacturer, we can see if there are pitted floors. We can see if there are areas in the windows that needs to be screened. We can see if the walls, the paints are flaking. But we won't be on that food, and we can see the label on the food and we can make our decision, but we cannot see the microbes that are in that food. So we now have to subcontract the Bureau of Standards to analyze that product for us. And then they return that product to us and we analyze the test report. And sometimes we have to certify products based on the Processed Food Act. You have certain categories of product that we have to certify, but we have to get a test report in order to certify that product. We issue certificates of registration. And if you have products going overseas and that country requires like certificate of free sale or certificate of hygiene or certificate of health, we do facilitate that in order to help our country economy. Other things, and I've said it already, we test and certify weight and measuring devices. We verify quantity declaration on prepackaged goods. Even for some persons, like whenever they're sending cheese overseas, we will go in and we check each cheese to ensure that the weights are okay. If you go on a supermarket shelf and you probably see products that are there in the clear bags, we do go in periodically and check to see if you say that it is 1 kg, it's actually 1 kg that is inside that container. And we maintain strong enforcement programs. Currently, we will get into the enforcement section a little bit later, and we do assist in educating the public like this forum we have here, and we assist in setting the standards by providing technical guidance. And we make sure, so we don't say advice, we say guidance. So we'll guide you. So if you call the office and you are doing a particular product, we'll tell you which legislation you should look into. Okay? So we are now getting in the meat of the matter. Questions are asked. I'm this type of student. Even if I go around and round and round, I ensure that I answer the question that was asked. So it says standards of goods for import. What are the rules? The rules, in essence, are our legislation. And again, you will see the Standards Act come into play, and in particular, the Standards Regulation of 1983. We have compulsory standard specification, and we have trade order. We have trade orders. Under the Weights and Measures Act of 1976, we have the attendant regulation, and we do have trade orders. But in particular, this one, why I place it there, is that if the good is underweight, is the Weights and Measures Act that we have to take into consideration. That's the one that speaks about short weight. So once the product is short weight, we can take an action against that person or owner of that commodity. The other rules, and I've stated all of that, just the legislations are our rules. We can't go it. And I know you'll appreciate that we are technically a creature of the legislation. We have to abide by what is written in law. Now, we think or feel that we should do, we have to abide by the law. So our rules are our laws or our legislations. So I picked this out to speak about some of the standards commonly used. As I said, there are over 130 compulsory standard specifications, but I just pick out a few for you to get familiar. So we have the Jamaican standard specification for labeling of good. And this is one of them that we may use a lot. So if there's no compulsory standard specification for you and you have a prepackaged good, we can use this labeling standard. Then we have things that get more specific, like the one that speaks about the requirements for prepackaged good. So the first one speaks about a good, because a person can carry, for example, cement in a ship. It's not prepackaged, like a bag of cement, if I may say, or they carry steel. Steel is not prepackaged in a sense. It's not prepackaged. I shouldn't even say in a sense. It's not prepackaged. So we have to use the general requirements in that regard. And then you have the prepackaged code, like your regular, whether it be your even radio in a sense, from once it's in a container, your lotion, your petroleum jelly, all of those things, labeling requirements are there. Then it is getting more specific. Prepackaged food, that is CRS 5, 2010. And CRS in this instance mean CARICOM regional standards. So it's a standard that is used right across the Caribbean. And this is for prepackaged food. So whether you have nuts, flour, bread, anything that is food, as a matter of fact, food is defined as anything that is processed, semi-processed, or raw, that is intended for human consumption. So whether it be water, alcoholic beverage, it is a food. We consider it to be a food. So this is what we'll use this standard specification, or compulsory standard specification, I should say, we will use. And we have the one for footwear. And as you can see, and I see some smiles down there for the last one, when we speak about for rubber condoms, the package and labeling condoms or in consumer packages. And again, we use this because, again, we use this for mainly imported products, but it's there for every product once it's been offered for sale in Jamaica. We have our electrical products, and hopefully they can share this presentation to the persons here, so you can go through, and these are just some. So we have lead acid battery for automobile. We have the PVC insulated cables. We have for electrical fans and regulators, and we could go on and on. We have compulsory standard specification for these. Some others, construction materials. So your hot roll steel bars, you know, we have to use the fancy name, but this is just the steel that you'll use to construct a house. You have the hot dip zinc. That is just your zinc that you have on your roof. And we have different type of cement that we use, your Portland cement and the aggregate. So even the what we call stones that you use in your construction, they are compulsory standard specification from them. And we do go take samples and we do test these products to ensure that they are conforming. And the good old standard hollow concrete blocks, there's a standard for it. Ready mix concrete. So these trucks that you see passing with ready mix in it, we do go to the manufacturing plant, collect samples and test. As a matter of fact, all of these persons has also to be registered. So we have to take samples of these products. Again, tires, these are imported products and may be offered for sale online. Motor vehicle brake fluid, we could go on, LPG cylinders. We have hand sanitizer, not a big one, that we have compulsory standard specifications for. So technically, these are the rules. Yeah, pull out some food, bread, vinegar, cassava bread, brown cane sugar, spices and sauces. We have for packaged water, we have for packaged coconut water. And you can read, we have for honey, jams, jellies, marmalade. There's a compulsory standard specification for it. So those are the rules. And the other compulsory standard specification, you can find it on our website. You can look, start by typing in www.ncra.org.jm. You'll see a section that says standard compulsory standard specification. You can click it and you'll find the rest of them listed there. So those are the rules. Our act, regulations, and our compulsory standard specification. And again, I will say, we're moving away from using compulsory standard specification for now. But how long that will take, I can't say. So we are in the transitioning process. As a matter of fact, there is a unit set up at the Bureau of Standards just for that, a transition. So those are the rules. Do they apply to online purchases? Short answer to that is yes. It does, but it depends. And the reason for that, and I ensure that I pull this specific out of the standards regulation, because an inspector may at any reasonable time enter any premises where there's operation of a product. And from once there's a compulsory standard specification and or a standard specification, we can conduct an inspection of that commodity. And we can inspect such commodity, and we can take sample of it. We can examine the packaging, the labeling, and we can examine the books, anything that you have associated with it. Short answer is yes. So if it is online, yes. However, it has to be a commercial quantity, and that generally is declared by customs. So if there's a commercial quantity, there has to be an importer. So you may ask him, what is a commercial quantity? As I said, that is determined by customs to say, this is deemed as a commercial quantity. You, for example, if you go online and you buy one slippers, that is personal between you and the supplier or the retailer. We wouldn't have an interest, because the law doesn't permit us to look at personal items. However, if you, same one from the same supplier, now goes and you purchase 12 slippers, and it's been determined by custom that this is commercial quantity, then we can inspect your commodity. And that happens a lot of times. Even sometimes persons persons are, being nice and send back samples. The customs is not sure, they just say they need the inspector to come and have a look if we have an interest in it. But once it's declared to be a commercial quantity, that is when we would have an interest in it. So again, does it apply to online? Yes, but it has to be seen as a commercial amount for us to be interested, because again, on the standards regulation, it doesn't permit us for personal things. So if you, again, the 12 slippers, the one slippers, if you buy one slipper, purchase one slippers, it's between you and the person. We have no interest in it. But if that same person said you purchase 12 or 100 slippers, then it now becomes commercial quantity, and becomes an importer. And we have an interest in that product. Now we reach to an enforcement, and as you can see, I give a small explanation. It's an action taken by a body to ensure that rules are being followed in essence. What are some of our enforcement actions? And this is when you don't obey the rules now. This is what may happen to you. We may seize and detain the commodity. We can condemn that commodity. We can destroy or dispose of that commodity, but no, this process, it has to go through the court, and the court decide the forfeiture of the goods. Or we have where a person can be fined $3 million or 12 months in prison. But that now has to be determined by the court. So both the destruction and disposal of a commodity should be determined by the court, but we can take our actions of seizure and detention and condemnation. We have one more that we can do, and it's withdrawal from sale. But because we're speaking about imported goods, online goods, in essence, well, not necessarily imported, because a person in Jamaica can do online good. But if the person is in Jamaica, then we have access, and manufacturing the product in Jamaica, then we have access to that person's manufacturing plant, or we have access to that person's warehouse. So we'll conduct the inspection there before it reaches you as the consumer. If you want to know more about our regulations under the Standards Act, which is the Standards Regulation of 1983, it's on our website. You can have a read of it. Going forward, or what we're doing, the NCRA will continue to monitor goods for compliance. We continue to examine product labels. We continue to collect samples on your behalf, have it sent to the lab for analysis, analyze the test report, and we'll continue to take our enforcement action where necessary. We'll also advocate for the update of relevant legislation and the fast transition from compulsory standard specification to technical regulation. And we'll continue to expand our public education by engaging persons of the public, like forums similar to these. I think I have answered the question that was posed. So that's pretty much it. For further information, we have our head office, 19 Hope Road. We have 4 regional offices, one in Montego Bay, one in Mandeville, Ocherias, and one in Savannah, Lamar. If you're anywhere close, you can stop by, or you can call, because the numbers are there. If you do not want to call, you can go on our website. You can email us at info@ncra.org.jm. We also on WhatsApp at 876-289-NCRA. We are also on Facebook, LinkedIn. We are also on Instagram, Twitter, at NCRA Jamaica. The Dr. Hartnell Henry Standards and Technical Information Center That's where the standards are located. You can go at any time that the Bureau of Standards is open. You can read the standards as much as you want, take as much notes, no pictures, but you can also purchase it online. So it's free to read, free to take your notes, anything you want. All the regulations are on our website. Only the standard specifications are not on our website because those are for sale. That is it. As I said, I think I've answered your question. I trust that I did answer the question. I trust that there is some amount of clarification as it relates to the Bureau of Standards and the NCRA, and also as it relates to import or products that are being offered for sale online. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark, for your informative information. However, I have a question for you from one of our online persons. Their question is, how do you address the counterfeit Crocs, Ralph Lauren, and different kinds of shoes, for example, Nikes, Pumas, that are sold downtown? How do you address that?
All right, great question. And boy, yesterday I was in a meeting and I'm happy that I went to the meeting yesterday so I could answer this question in particular. Counterfeit is not within our remit, within our legislation. Counterfeit is generally conducted by the Jamaica Customs Agency. And I've learned yesterday, I must say, that unless the trademark brand holder or its affiliate request you to do an investigation on the matter or make a complaint to say, oh, that Crocs is fraud, then they tend not to do it. Our laws is that if Crocs come, we need to ensure that it is labeled properly.
Okay.
And it is safe for the use of the consumer, whether it's authentic or not. Some persons say it shouldn't be, but you have different agencies with different authority. And it would be not so prudent of us, if I may say, for us to go ahead and do something that is not within our legislation. So if it speak about fraudulent things, it's speaking about the Jamaica Customs Agency and not necessarily the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority or the Bureau of Standards Jamaica.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Clark. And it was good to know that your entity addresses like the petroleum, because that can affect bad gas, which was a challenge we had many years ago in Jamaica. Yes. In terms of the bad gas affecting the engines, and also the cement, because that also has an impact on construction. So especially since we live in an earthquake and hurricane belt, it is good to know that there are procedures in place to ensure that the cement that we buy for construction and the petroleum that we use in our motor vehicles are to a very high standard. And with that, another person was asking a question: have you been fortunate or unfortunate to find persons who do sell bad gas, not to ask you to name them, or bad cement that doesn't fit the standard?
If I may say, every day during our inspections, we do come across products that may not fit for use, if I may say. And if that is the case, the law permits a resample of that commodity. And we do go ahead and do our resample of that commodity. And if it doesn't pass on the second test or analysis, if I may, then we do our enforcement actions. So every day, regardless of the commodity, we do find commodities that may not meet the requirements. And what we do is to take our enforcement action, because at the end of the day, the question is always asked of us, what have you done?
I thank you for that, Mr. Clark. So, Mr. Clark, once again, thank you very much for such an informative morning. We have all learned a lot. And at this point, if there are no other questions, I will turn over to Mr. Kurt Brown.
I think we may have questions from the persons.
Yes, we have some questions in the audience.
Audience.
So we're going to the first person.
Good morning. Yes, my question is, how often do you conduct these various inspections and analysis of the commodities?
Often?
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much for that question. So I can say every day in terms of our from Monday to Friday. Once it's a work day, then you do have persons who go out, conduct their inspection. As a matter of fact, internally, we do have our itineraries that has to be presented like a month in advance just to state exactly where you are going. And I might even have to retract to say the everyday of working days, because you do have our inspectors. Anytime especially for the petroleum, they are down at Petrojam. They are out by Rockford on the top, whilst you're sleeping, collecting samples to take it back to the labs for analysis. So I won't even say working days. Every day, you do have persons there conducting inspections.
Thank you.
All right, so yesterday we learned a bit about the role of consumer affairs, etc. And it came to a question about food, that there are some labeling issues in some of our supermarkets. When you go, I don't speak Chinese, I don't know if you do, but I find that it's very difficult to make purchases because the labeling on the product is not in my language. And I don't know if that is something that the Bureau of Standards treats with or checks on, or your National Compliance and Regulatory Authority, if that's what you treat with. Can you tell us anything about that?
Definitely. Thanks again for that question. Yes, on the CRS 5, that's the labeling for prepackaged food that you speak of. Most definitely, it should be in your. It states that it shall be in the country at which you are reside, because it's a CARICOM regional standard. Basically, it should be in English. So you can have more than one language is on the product, but one has to be in English. If anyone at any time sees that there no English on the product, just kindly contact us and we will take the necessary actions. So again, I'll repeat, it shall be in English. There must be English on it.
All right, so does this extend to other products? So it's not just food, it's other things?
Other food, or any item that is prepackaged. The compulsory standard specification clearly states that it shall be in English.
All right, and because I'm hard of learning, so when we buy these air conditioning units and we can't read them because all of the writing here is in Chinese, Japanese, English. I don't know what it is. If you had mentioned earlier in your presentation that if you purchase a one item or a two item, but when you have a large organization that's purchasing hundreds of the item, is that now something that's going to come under your purview because it's quite a big number, or is it still going to be seen as personal use in a sense? So what number gets your interest?
As I said, it has to be, it depends on the amount of product, because two air conditioning unit purchased from someone overseas, for example, or online, and two slippers, it's two different things. But if you are purchasing from a person for the use of your organization, then that again will not come under commercial quantity, because unless you're going to offer it for resale now, that is when we will come into play. And if it should be in English, yes, we'll prefer it to be in English. But if you are purchasing it and you are okay with that language, we don't necessarily get involved per se. And great question you asked for me to say. The consumer or the user of the item, in my view, has more power than even the regulator. Because if you are not buying, they have nothing to sell.
But there's sometimes when you feel a little forced. So for example, you're buying a used car and the car comes from one of those countries that you can get it at a affordable rate. And then when you go to turn on your radio or to do any programming, you see asterisks and exclamation marks. So what do you
know?
do?
That is now being offered for sale. So yes, but if you were to import that car to use it by yourself, then no. But if you're going to offer it for sale, then yes, it ought to be in English because it is now a commodity.
And so who would we report to you? Would we report the car mart or who would we report?
Yeah, you can report the seller or the owner, holder of that commodity.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we've looked at food and we've looked at vehicles and we've looked at air conditioning. We have another question.
Yes, my question is importing from other Caribbean countries. Do you have to know the regulations for exporting from that Caribbean country into Jamaica so that you know whether or not you can accept those products or produce coming in?
Yeah, all right. Thanks so much again for that question. The importer, the onus is on the importer to know the regulation to which they're importing that product or that commodity to. That is just a short answer. So if, for example, you are in Barbados, for example, and you're sending a product to Jamaica, you should know the requirements for Jamaica. If you are in Jamaica and you're exporting to Barbados, you should know the requirements of Barbados in order for you to not be, your product not to be enforcement action to be taken against your commodity. So the onus is on the importer or sometimes the exporter.
So can we take it to the matter of pesticides? So
pesticide control of what?
Pesticide, yeah. So you would not have anything to do with that, even if it is on the supermarket shelf, because there are some that get to the shelves and you see a great product that you want. It's for individual use. I have a wasp problem and I'd like to get rid of them, but I don't see anything for wasp on our shelves. So can I just bring in a bottle of some spray that Amazon advertises? How does that work?
Again, if you just go on Amazon and purchase the item that is personal use, and you now have to know the regulations if you are able to take in that product. But that aspect in terms of you're able to take in that pesticide will fall under Pesticide Control Authority. If you know go on your shelves and you see that pesticide well labeled, then we have some jurisdiction in it as it relates to our general requirements of a commodity.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cruikshank?
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark, and thank you very much to our listeners and viewers online and at the Norman Manley Law School Legal Aid Clinic. Mr. Clark, I'll now turn over to Mr. Brown at this time, who will give the vote of thanks.
Norman Manley Law School.
On behalf of the NMLS Law School Legal Aid Clinic, we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come in and impart an extensive knowledge of your understanding of the NCRA's obligations, the operations, the rules, the standards of imports, and the enforcement actions. Your presentation was very informative, Mr. Clerk. So we thank you again for coming in.
Evan, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Yes.
All right, let's take a picture.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Clark. It was a
Yeah,
pleasure.
man. And all the best to you all.
Thank you, sir.
I mean.
And this is where we'll end our legal aid clinic fair today. Remember to join us tomorrow. We will be live starting at 10 a.m. So come down to the Norman Manley Law School Legal Aid Clinic on Gibraltar Road, right beside the police station. It is the gate by the post office. Come down and be with us tomorrow live as we provide you with more information in purchasing products on the third stage of our legal aid fair, buyer beware. And at this time, good morning and have a good day.